My name's Ian Douglas. Mark Twain apparently once said it takes a lifetime to prepare an impromptu speech. Well, tonight's not exactly impromptu, but hopefully I can share some of my experiences with you and some of the stuff I've been lucky enough to be part of. And so I also want to talk about my business. It's good to get a bit of a plug in case there's any potential clients out there. I'll talk about what Korra means to me and why I joined it, and then talk about my great mentor in life, a guy called Sol Kerzner, who some of you might have heard of, South African, who I was privileged to work for, for a number of years. And then I'll talk to you about a few things that I think might be going on in the hospitality industry, and then get into some questions. So my background is I've been in the hospitality industry in tourism for about 25 years. I've been very privileged to work on some really major international projects that generate highlights and headlines, and also have appeared on TV screens across the world. But I've also worked on some fairly small things. I've worked in many countries around the world, from Singapore to Mexico, which is also interesting, and it's been great being able to experience how people do business differently in those different countries, and I think the one thing that I learned from those different cultures and different countries is that it's pretty much the same message all along. You need strong leader, you need vision, and you need someone who really kicks butt to get these big things done. So working for Sol for 20 years was pretty incredible. I worked for him very intensely for 10 years. I always used to call the years I worked for Sol dog years, because each year was worth about 7. He's a cantankerous old bastard, but he's a pretty good guy. At the end of the day, he's fair. He's incredibly dedicated to his family most of all, but the people he works for as well. And he's one of those people that you got to kind of figure out when to speak to him about things and how to speak to him about things. He's also one of those people who hates paper, and yet he's a great reader. So he doesn't like long reports on business stuff, but he reads papers avidly and reads journals avidly. But when he looks at a deal, he wants to see it all on one piece of paper. And that's kind of an interesting discipline to learn, because I'm exactly the opposite. I'm a guy that I carry around a big briefcase with lots of paper, because I guess I'm kind of insecure and I want to refer to the paper, but sometimes you've got to just kind of put it down on one piece of paper and go with your gut and your instinct. So some of the skills I think I bring to the party in terms of my business, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a moment, is the ability, I guess, to put together big projects. I'm really not a specifically skilled guy in any particular single field. I've always been a generalist. I was lucky to study both law in Cape Town, South Africa, and then I came over to Oxford after doing an MBA as well, or the MBA was actually after Oxford. But I've bid for a lot of projects around the world. I've been generally successful. I haven't won all of them. I'll tell you a story about one of those, which was a real kick in the butt. But I bid for some successful projects, and often when you bid with these projects, you sort of, that's where you end the process. But I've often taken them through the process of starting the business and then delivering the actual operations. Always in hotel and resort development, mostly focused on resorts, which is an interesting space and a very particular space and different from urban hotels, and involves a lot of people management, a lot of administration. People always ask me, and you might have seen on the previous slide, which I didn't read out verbatim, what's your best skill, what's your strongest skill? And I kind of always rather boringly say I'm a good administrator, because I think that is a key skill in terms of getting these things done and over the line. I started off in South Africa. I was born in South Africa, and one of the first big things I did was the Cape Town International Convention Center, which was a great project to lead because it was very much an aspirational project. The city wanted a convention center. Cape Town is on the map, unfortunately right now for the wrong reasons, because we're running out of water. which is down to poor management and bad luck. But there it is, bad luck in 3 years of bad weather and poor management in not building the right facilities. But Cape Town, anyway, wanted a convention center. It's not a very rich city, so I had to go out and firstly convince the government and then convince private sector to put money into a convention center. And a convention center is a project that everyone feels great about. It's exciting to work on it because we really delivered something that transformed the tourism economy of Cape Town and really started to fill the beds in the winter and the difficult times of the year when Cape Town is not as beautiful as it looks in all the pictures that you see. I moved on from that to start my own consulting business, and that was when Sol recruited me. And I joined him for the second time, as it were. So my business right now, this is the short plug, is a consulting business that provides management services to the hospitality industry. I work on big projects, generally for a couple of clients, not too many, and I tend to work for long periods delivering a specific project to them. I think the skill that I have is I've dealt with some difficult problems. I've often dealt with government interaction, which is, I guess, a particular skill in itself. And I worked on projects like Atlantis The Palm in Dubai, which I'll talk about. I'll show you an interesting video, which will probably be the highlight of the talk. I worked on the project in Morocco, which we established there. I worked on the bid for the casino in Singapore, which we lost. I'll tell you a story about that. And then quite a few of the one and only projects, and then South Africa's largest and most profitable casino way back in my early days. So, thank you. Quorum is an interesting segue for me because I'm not as young as most of the people in the room. I'm 55. I was in my consulting business, had doing things for 2 years, as it were. It was fairly new because I finished Sol. I was kind of his last man standing, as it were, when he retired in 2014. And then we actually we ran a business together for about 18 months, and then he decided finally to retire. But my consulting business was going fine, and then I actually used to go to PPN in Knightsbridge, and I saw Matt, who is quite an unusual character, I think, and someone who I think has a great ability to capture the room and energize people in a very encouraging way, very unique way. And I decided to join. I think it was his first applicant, as it were, so I'm not sure what that says about me. But I joined it really because of the whole opportunity to learn and develop my own skills. I know very little about property development other than the hotel sector. I wanted to network and share my contacts and meet new contacts, which has been one of the great things. I also thought it was a great opportunity to share experiences and hear from other people about their experiences. And I realize there's some people in the room that aren't Quorum members, and this is the plug for Quorum, as it were. But there's a great level of trust, a level of discretion and confidentiality that kind of goes through the whole club. And also, I think there's the opportunity for personal growth. So for me, it was really a second string, something else to add to my bow, if you like. And also, of course, in terms of the sports cars and places in Monaco, and that an opportunity to have a bit of fun. So, the things, I guess, that I learned from Sol Kerzner were probably, firstly, sort of to have a huge passion for the business and huge dedication. I must say the guy's 82 now. I've never met a guy who is so focused and driven by what he does. I mean, he would tell you himself, he had a problem with alcohol. He gave up alcohol overnight, stopped drinking. That was probably 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. He still works out in the gym, aged 82, 5 days of the week. This guy's driven. He's a machine. But I learned a lot of other things from him. And in terms of business principles, I guess the thing that I learned was, firstly, was the whole question of having a great vision. And Sol came from South Africa. He came from the wrong side of the tracks. He was a guy who really didn't have two beans to rub together. And he went off and created South Africa's greatest hotel, company, and then took it international and developed 3 pretty impressive brands, 2 of which are still enormously successful around the world, namely Atlantis and the One and Only Group. So the second thing, I think, was the question of teamwork and working with great people. And he worked with the best in the business. He always overpaid. He always went and sought out new talent. And he used to travel, and I used to travel with him. And in one of my worst dog years, I traveled 183 days in the year. But you see a lot of stuff if you travel that much, and you discover new talent, and you figure out what people are doing, and you've got to keep evolving. You've got to expect from your team the best, and you've got to make sure that they deliver the best. And that was something that he did right until the end. Keep running the numbers. He was, as I said, a guy who didn't really like a lot of paper, but he always understood, the 3 or 4 important numbers that were on the project, and always kept tracking them right through. He also had an ability to pick up partners and to partner with people that shared his vision. And I think there's so many big partnerships in the hotel industry where that sort of thing has gone wrong, and it's led to enormous problems in unraveling the business. He had a great focus, and that's a key thing, to keep focused and make sure that you're always delivering the end result. But at the same time, to realize that there are going to be bumps along the way, and to just keep that focus. Also be fair with the people that you're working with, and ensure that you're always supporting your people around you, and supporting the people that's supplying goods to you, and of course your stakeholders as well. Go through delays. We had an interesting situation with Atlantis The Palm, which I'll show you the video in a minute, but literally 2 months before the place was due to open, one of the workers in Dubai was working with a blowtorch on the roof, and I think didn't realize that if you put a blowtorch down, it potentially can catch fire. And of course the whole lobby went up in smoke, and the project was all over the news, expecting to be delayed. So I got on a plane. I remember I got the call at 4:30 that morning. We were on the plane flying over, and we came up with a plan to make sure that lobby was delivered, and the marble, every piece of it that was damaged was reconditioned. The place was obviously reconstructed, and we opened on time, with people having to enter the property through a different entrance, but still make sure that the project opened on time and in accordance with the original schedule. You've got to take some chances in life as well, and I think that's the other thing he constantly did. He went off and took the company private. When it was listed on the stock exchange, it was a huge takeover battle with all the big private equity firms trying to get him, trying to undercut or overpay what Sol was prepared to pay back to take his own company private. It wasn't entirely his; he had other shareholders. But you've got to sometimes take those chances, and I think that's where, if you're loyal to the people around you, you take them along with you, which is what he did. One of the great things he did, which I think is a great lesson for all of us, is to give people something to talk about. And in terms of all the launches that he did of all the different properties around the world, he always got celebrities there. He was the first guy to do that. We had a guy specifically in the company who was tasked with the whole question of finding the celebrities and essentially managing them, and he used to basically take these people out to lunch and send back extraordinary expense accounts, with lunch with Barbara Streisand and dinner with Mariah Carey and that sort of thing. But people were talking about it, and Atlantis The Palm, when it launched, was the largest fireworks display that had ever been staged in the world, bigger than the Beijing Olympics, and that was the kind of thing that made headlines and delivered delivered the visitorship afterwards that drove occupancies in the high 80s and 90s and premium room rates. He always used to say our currency is dedication, enthusiasm, commitment. That's the key things that matter. And he also always used to say, you got to box on. You got to kind of just keep on going and make sure that when things get you down, that you get up and you fight on. I was lucky enough through him to meet a lot of celebrities. That's somebody you might recognize in the middle. But also some fun people like Kylie Minogue, Mariah Carey, those sort of people. I don't have them on my Rolodex or my speed dial, but it was still pretty amazing meeting them. So that's Atlantis. I think you probably have seen it. And this is just a short video, which is kind of a time lapse, which is interesting to just see how the project evolved. Thanks. So that project took about 5 years from literally the first day when Sol drove onto the site. I wasn't with him, sadly, but it was before I joined him back in London. But he drove onto the site with this crazy Arab, a guy called Sultan bin Salam, who was a very visionary guy who was trusted by the Sheikh Mohammed, and he was tasked with preparing the Palm. And you had a meeting of the minds. You had two guys with vision. Sultan was saying, I want the anchor on the Palm. I want something that's going to be what people talk about. And Sol said, sure. Let's joint venture it and we'll do it. They built it. It was $1.5 billion. So it cost about $1 million a key, a room. About $1 million a room. That's the way you measure things in the hotel business. You look at it as a cost per key. Of course, you're including all the other public areas in there. The actual construction was only 2 years, just over 2 years. And some interesting stats, the main aquarium holds 11 million liters. The footprint of Atlantis The Palm is the equivalent of 64 Wembley soccer pitches. The thickness of the glass in the main aquarium viewing window is about 70 centimeters. So 70 centimeters, people can't really gauge that when you look through the glass and you see the fish. There's about 65,000 fish and 250 different species of fish. So there's all sorts of things. They're expanding now phase 2, which is going to be 800 rooms, a further 800 rooms and 250 residences. It's another $1.5 billion. Which I think they're getting quite good value if you consider what they're doing. And it's really aimed at high-end residential people buying residences in Dubai, and of course an upmarket product in the hotel space. Moving on to One and Only, which was the destination luxury resort business that was established out of a collection of hotels in the group was a completely different story. Very much bespoke, barefoot luxury, people looking for very unique experiences in very special destinations in the world. We did a number of projects around the world, which I can tell anyone about if they want to ask any questions. I don't want to run too late though. And then also Mazagan, which was the brand that was established for the Morocco Project, which has been also done pretty well. So in terms of things that I think are happening in the industry, what's going on in hospitality, trying to be a little bit of a soothsayer, I guess, and trying to say, well, where are things moving towards? It is a very dynamic space. People, I think, are looking for more as information becomes more and more prevalent, and people, everyone's an expert, everyone can comment on things. People are looking for very tailored experiences, and particularly, obviously, in this high-end space. But they're also looking for laid-back luxury. People don't really want to go and sit and eat at a great restaurant, Nobu, and dress up. They like to go in their trainers and their designer shoes, which probably cost more than the clothes that they would wear if they were getting dressed up. They're also looking for meaningful and sustainable travel. It's a big movement at the moment, and I think it's enduring as people become more conscious of their carbon footprint and that. They're looking for authentic experiences and real human interaction. So, for instance, there's some guys that are working, obviously all of this is in the gig economy. I don't know if anyone's heard of a company called Eat With, which is a fascinating company to watch in this space, which is curating dining experiences in different parts of the world, where essentially you go onto an app, you book dinner in Barcelona with Miguel, and he's going to give you a genuine tapas experience, and there'll be 8 people there, and people are booking these experiences, and the hotels are even starting to market this, which you would think would be competition to their own F&B, their own restaurants, but it's not, because they know they need to give the guests something new. They need to give the guests something different. So that kind of type of curation and type of experience is really growing. Information, as I said, is everywhere, and everyone's an expert, and everyone's got a voice. So people are booking very late. They are doing an enormous amount of research and inspiration, creating wish lists. And then when they're in the place that they're traveling, they are wanting to be very connected. Only 20% of the travelers, in terms of all the surveys that have been done lately, want to travel without access to their cell phones. I'm amazed it's that high, but that's the way it is, and that's changing the way travelers are traveling. Brands are key. There's just so many brands out there. Every week there's a new collection of brands, and brands are fighting for the premium that people will pay to know that there's something reliable, but there isn't always something reliable. So you see the concentration of branding in terms of space. Companies like Marriott who've gone out and bought a lot of different brands and are doing that. Sales and distribution's changing, where people are actually buying direct. Everyone's trying to cut out the middleman, and the mobile is the key device. Obviously, nobody wants to go onto laptops. Everything needs to happen on your mobile in terms of that. The home sharing business is growing. People often ask about Airbnb. It's currently still not significant in terms of the room numbers. It's less than 20%, but I think it's going to grow, and I think all of those type of sharing apps and sharing technologies will continue to encroach in the traditional hotel space. Everything has to be bespoke. Everything has to be about the local economy and how you support local people, and you really are selling a story, not a room anymore. Finally, about the whole question of icons, and I worked on a project with Frank Gehry for Sol Kerzner, who's one of the most famous architects in the world. This was the kind of tragic story in the sort of good and bad things that happened. We worked on this, that's actually a building, believe it or not, that we worked on in Singapore. And we'd submitted this bid. I'd actually worked on the project for 3 years. And we submitted the bid, and 2 days after we submitted, Sol Kerzner's son, who was the chairman of CEO of the company, was killed in a helicopter smash, and that, of course, I think caused severe disruption in the whole process. It was a great tragedy. He was an amazing guy. What was remarkable about it was that Sol actually left his son's funeral in New York, flew across the world to go and speak to the government of Singapore about the project. At the end of the day, though, we lost. 3 years was down the toilet. But that's kind of some of the good and bad of what happens in this dynamic industry. So there were some great highlights. Atlantis Dubai was probably the greatest highlight in a way. Interesting though, because it was brought to the market literally a month, 6 weeks after Lehman's crashed. We had a $20 million opening party, which everyone thought was crazy, but you can't cancel a $20 million party 6 weeks out. You've got to kind of keep going. So it paid off in the end. It was kind of the grit and determination of getting something on the map and making sure it happened. Anyway, I think that's probably enough. If anyone wants to ask any questions, be happy to take them.